Hey, tonight we're exploring the Kardashev Scale and the quiet search for civilizations far greater than our own. You don't need to know anything before we begin. Just imagine yourself in the vastness of night, a sky of stars above, each one glowing with hidden potential. Energy becomes the measure of progress here, not cities or borders or flags. You probably won't survive this world unchanged, but that's the point. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. And if you're still awake, tell me where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk slowly through this imagined landscape where time flows differently. Every step carries you deeper into the idea of measuring entire civilizations by the way they draw power from the universe, not by their art or their language or their conflicts, but by the raw currents of energy they can command. It feels strange at first, like judging a person only by the air they breathe. Yet the more you listen to the quiet hum of the cosmos, the more it makes sense. The Kardashev scale is simple, almost disarmingly so. It tells you there are three broad categories of civilization: one that can harness the full energy of a planet, one that can capture the brilliance of a star, and one that can tame the staggering light of a galaxy. That's it. 3 steps on the ladder that stretches into infinity. And yet these 3 steps carry the weight of everything: the story of survival, of expansion, of ambition so vast it no longer fits inside a human frame. You picture the first rung as a candle flickering in the dark, a civilization that just begins to master its planet's winds and rivers, the lightning in its storms, the fire within its crust. It is fragile, still vulnerable to extinction. A single asteroid, a global famine, a series of mistakes could end it. But if it stabilizes, if it manages its energy wisely, it becomes something more than temporary. It endures. One quietly fascinating fact slips into your mind. The Earth receives about 173,000 terawatts of solar energy every day, far more than humanity's current needs. If we learn to capture and use it all, we would approach the first step of the Kardashev scale. It's staggering to realize that the energy falls around you constantly, invisible and unused, like an ocean lapping at your feet while you sip from a cup. But an eerie thought follows. Civilizations might not always climb this ladder. They might stall, collapse, or turn inward, never reaching Type 1. Perhaps the silence you notice in the sky is not absence, but failure repeating itself across billions of worlds. It lingers as a question you can't quite resolve. Do civilizations tend to rise, or do they mostly fall? Your mind drifts. You picture other beings, perhaps on distant planets, who once gazed at their own stars and wondered the same thing. Maybe their worlds shone with lights once, flickering across continents, only to vanish long before you ever looked their way. Researchers still wonder if the lack of evidence for alien power, no great beacons, no massive constructs visible from afar, is a warning written into the universe itself. For now, you stay at the base of the scale, listening. The concept hums like a mantra: planet, star, galaxy. It's almost too large, and yet, as you keep drifting through the thought, it begins to feel natural, even soothing. A gentle ladder, rising into darkness, inviting you upward, without haste, without demand. You linger in the quiet, still close to the first step, and you let yourself imagine what it feels like to belong to a Type 1 civilization. It isn't an empire of conquest or noise. It is something subtler, softer, a planet-wide hum of balance, where every tide, every gust of wind, every flash of lightning is part of a system woven together by intelligence and care. You walk across a coastline in your mind, the air warm and heavy with salt, and the waves seem to move in rhythm with unseen machinery beneath the sea. Instead of oil rigs or smoke, you see graceful towers swaying like kelp, drawing power from currents that never rest. A gentle field of turbines glimmers in the sun, not harsh, but smooth, blending with the horizon. Humanity dreams of this, but on the scale itself, it is more than a dream. It is the requirement for survival. One fascinating fact settles beside you like a seashell pressed into your palm. To be a Type 1 civilization, you would need to control about 10 to the 16 watts of energy. That's 10 million times greater than the average power output of all human civilization today. Numbers so immense dissolve into feeling, the sense that an entire planet becomes like a heart, beating steadily, never tiring. There's something eerie about it, too. A civilization that masters its whole planet must also face the temptation of over-control. If every gust of wind can be tamed, what happens to freedom? If every river can be diverted, does wilderness still exist? You picture a forest under the glow of soft artificial moons, perfectly maintained, yet somehow silent, missing the wild irregularities that make it feel alive. A planet fully managed may shimmer with beauty, but it may also echo with absence. You pause with that thought, letting it stretch. Researchers still debate whether humanity could ever reach Type 1 without destroying the very planet we rely upon. Can we build harmony out of greed, or will the attempt break us first? Some argue that technology will balance us, while others whisper that balance cannot be engineered at all. Your steps carry you further across this imagined Earth, an Earth that has completed its transformation. Cities glow faintly in the distance, their light subtle, powered by solar collectors so vast they ripple across deserts like lakes of glass. Roads hum with vehicles silent as breath. The atmosphere holds no smoke, only the natural haze of oceans rising and falling in their endless cycle. You feel the air itself more gentle, less burdened, as though the whole world exhales in relief. And yet, there's an unease that never fully leaves, because to control so much is to risk so much. A planetary civilization may withstand earthquakes, famine, even asteroids, but it must never stop tending its energy balance. One miscalculation, one cascade of failure, and the lights across continents could dim at once. You let yourself imagine standing in such silence, a world gone still, where even the wind no longer belongs to you. You reflect on humanity's position now balanced on the edge. We control fragments, the flow of rivers through dams, the strength of atoms through reactors, the light of the sun through panels spread across rooftops. But we also burn what poisons us. We waste what we could preserve. Our civilization trembles between two possibilities: ascent into Type 1 or collapse back into silence. The scale waits, patient. It does not care which path you choose. It only measures like a cosmic clock, noting how much energy flows through the veins of a world. You walk a little further, listening for the beat of that clock, soft but steady, marking the progress of species across billions of years. Somewhere, perhaps, another planet has already made the climb. Perhaps their seas already hum with power, their skies shimmer with harnessed storms. Or perhaps they stumbled, as so many might, their chance fading into ruins no one will ever see. You breathe out softly, unsure which possibility feels more comforting, that we are alone on the path, or that others have already walked it and vanished. The wind at your back feels like an invitation, urging you onward, not hurriedly, but with a promise. The next rung waits, not far above, glowing faintly with the light of a star. You find yourself pausing at the edge of the world you've been walking through. The ocean has grown quiet, the turbines stilling in your imagination. You turn your gaze toward the cities instead, and you notice something fragile. The path to Type 1 isn't steady, not a smooth climb. It trembles with contradictions. Every new form of power humanity discovers opens a door, but behind it lies both warmth and fire, creation and destruction. You think of the first spark struck from stone, fire blooming in the dark. It offered protection, food, warmth, yet it also burned forests and villages to ash. Later, coal carried steamships across oceans, but it cloaked the sky in smoke that dimmed the sun. Oil lifted planes into the air, but spilled slick black across coasts. And nuclear fire? It whispered of endless energy, yet its shadow fell long and cold in the aftermath of mushroom clouds. One quietly fascinating fact drifts in, like a pebble skipping over water. In 1900, humanity consumed less than 10 exajoules of energy each year. Today, the number has grown past 600 exajoules. In barely more than a century, energy use multiplied 60 times. That pace is breathtaking, but also frightening. It suggests hunger without end, a civilization accelerating so quickly it may forget how to slow down. An eerie detail lingers in your thoughts. Buried within our atmosphere, carbon dioxide levels today are higher than at any time in the past 800,000 years. That invisible gas is the ghost of our hunger, floating quietly, altering climate patterns, rewriting coastlines. It's a reminder that the path to Type 1 doesn't just require invention, it requires survival through our own mistakes. You walk into a city street in this dream, neon glowing faintly against rain-slicked pavement. Every window hums with electricity, every tower fed by invisible veins of power stretching from deep beneath the ground. Yet you can feel the fragility here. A blackout would plunge it into silence, one broken link unraveling thousands of lives at once. A planetary civilization cannot afford such weakness. It must weave resilience into every wire, every current, every circuit of light. Researchers still debate whether this hunger for growth is sustainable. Some argue that energy efficiency, renewable systems, and clever engineering will carry us smoothly upward. Others believe the demand will always outpace the solution, pulling us toward collapse before we ever reach planetary mastery. The Kardashev Scale doesn't answer this. It only sets the benchmark, Type 1 or not. The rest is left to chance, to choice, to time. You let yourself imagine humanity at a crossroads. On one side, a world where storms are harvested gently, where deserts bloom with solar arrays, where fusion burns like a small star in a chamber beneath mountains. On the other side, a world where greed overwhelms foresight, where consumption erases forests and chokes seas, where the climb ends in silence. Both possibilities feel close, breathing down your neck as you walk. The night air of this imagined city grows heavy, thick with both promise and threat. You trace your hand along the cool stone of a wall, noticing how even the smallest light depends on vast networks of energy stretching across continents. That dependence is both power and weakness. It makes you wonder whether true advancement lies in harnessing more energy or in learning how to need less. A quiet reflection drifts through you. Perhaps the Kardashev scale measures ambition, not wisdom. To rise, you must want more, always more, until the planet itself bends under your will. But wisdom sometimes asks for restraint, for silence, for leaving certain powers untouched. Could a civilization ever ascend by taking less rather than more? The question flickers like a street lamp in fog, glowing without resolution. As you leave the city behind in your thoughts, you feel the pull of the next step growing stronger. Beyond planetary mastery lies something stranger. Not just a world lit by human hands, but a star enclosed, its fire harvested, its brilliance woven into civilization itself. The idea glows faintly ahead of you, too vast to grasp, yet calling you closer like the warmth of dawn beyond a horizon.
You carry the weight of those choices with you, stepping into the quiet that surrounds the edge of the planetary dream. The air feels thinner here, as if you're leaving behind the warmth of cities and forests and moving toward a threshold invisible but profound. The Kardashev Scale calls it the crossing, the delicate moment when a civilization shifts from being fragile, temporary, and uncertain into something more stable, more enduring, more planetary. You walk as though balancing on a narrow bridge. Below you lies everything humanity has already built, a patchwork of invention and error, brilliance and waste. Ahead of you stretches a dim glow, the promise of Type 1, a world that hums with harmony, drawing on every current of energy available. And here, right at the middle, is the most dangerous place of all. Civilizations either make it across or they vanish. One quietly fascinating fact whispers into your thoughts. Astrophysicist Carl Sagan once estimated that humanity sits around 0.7 on the Kardashev scale. That number sounds simple, but in truth it means we are perched precariously. We are close enough to see the first rung, but far enough that falling backward remains a constant threat. You feel that precariousness in your bones, like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking at the waves far below. An eerie image follows, the idea that most civilizations might never cross this bridge at all. The term Great Filter appears in your mind, a phrase scientists use to describe the mysterious barrier that may explain the silence of the stars. Perhaps countless cultures across the universe reach the same moment, a time of rapid growth, global connection, explosive energy use, and then collapse. The silence you notice in the night sky might not be emptiness. It might be the echo of civilizations that never made it past this fragile crossing. You imagine the threshold itself, energy no longer scarce, but abundant, balanced. Wars over resources fading, because the resources themselves flow freely. Storms no longer feared, but guided. The heat of the Earth's core tapped with care, the light of the sun distributed with precision. It is a vision of calm, yet also of control so complete it feels almost unnatural. You wonder whether life loses something essential when it becomes too stable, too managed, too certain. Researchers still debate what form this crossing would take for humanity. Would it be a slow transformation, with wind farms and solar fields spreading like moss until they quietly outnumber oil wells? Or would it be sudden, a leap made possible by nuclear fusion, a new star lit in a chamber, rewriting our place in the cosmos overnight? No one knows. And perhaps the truth will be a mixture. Progress both creeping and leaping, stumbling forward like a child learning to walk. You drift into a vision of that child, not a human child, but the child of civilization itself. It wobbles, learning to stand on its planet's energy, reaching for balance, tumbling often. But if it learns, if it steadies itself, it may run, not across fields or streets, but across the very surface of worlds, a species no longer afraid of scarcity. Yet even as this vision unfolds, another thought curls around the edges. What if the crossing demands more than technology? What if it demands wisdom, compassion, restraint? Machines can build turbines and reactors, but they cannot teach a species how to share, how to value survival over greed. The Kardashev scale is silent on this. It measures only energy, never wisdom. But perhaps wisdom is the hidden cost of every step upward. You stand at the threshold in your mind, looking back one last time. The world behind you flickers with light and smoke, torn between destruction and invention. The path ahead glows faintly, a soft horizon where balance might be possible. You'd take a breath, uncertain if the crossing is inevitable or impossible. The silence of the stars does not answer, and so you walk on, slow and dreamlike, leaving behind the fragility of thresholds, moving toward a vision both awe-inspiring and unsettling. A star enclosed, its fire harnessed, its brilliance transformed into civilization.
You step carefully now into the realm of Type 2, where imagination must stretch far beyond the familiar outlines of a planet. You lift your gaze upward into the pale brilliance of a star, and you let yourself wonder what it means for an entire civilization to enclose that light. The word for it lingers softly on your tongue, a Dyson sphere. Not a fragile satellite, not a single station orbiting in silence, but a structure so vast it wraps around a sun, drinking in its endless fire. The thought alone makes your breath catch. A star the size of millions of Earths, somehow tamed, its light no longer spilling freely into the void, but channeled, stored, consumed. To imagine such a feat is to step beyond engineering, beyond architecture, into a kind of artistry written in starlight. You don't picture it as metal scaffolding, harsh and mechanical. You see it instead as a great shell of mirrors and petals, each one unfolding gracefully like a flower blooming endlessly in space. One quietly fascinating fact flickers into your mind. Our sun releases about 3.8 times 10 to the 26 watts of power every second. It's a number too large to hold, but you can reduce it to feeling. In a single hour, the sun bathes Earth with more energy than humanity uses in an entire year. If a civilization captured all of that, not just the fraction that reaches a small planet, it would climb effortlessly to Type 2. But the eerie detail follows just as quickly. The light of a star wrapped in such a structure would change. From a distance, its visible brightness might dim, its spectrum shift. To outside observers, it might seem as though the star were flickering or sick or cloaked in shadow. And yet, in the infrared, it would glow with excess heat, the waste of all that captured power bleeding back into space. To look upon such a star is to glimpse both abundance and secrecy. You walk through the vision in your mind, floating weightless. Panels stretch out in every direction, each one shimmering like glass, angled to catch the star's breath. Between them, vast corridors of shadow thread through space, where civilizations might travel, not across continents, but across the skin of a star. You drift through one of these corridors, silent, dwarfed by the impossible scale. It feels at once divine and unsettling, to live within the light, but never beneath a sky. Researchers still wonder if such structures are even possible. Could any material withstand the gravitational pull, the radiation, the sheer violence of a star? Some argue that instead of a solid shell, it would be a swarm, trillions of satellites, each drinking in light, together forming a loose cage around the star. Others suggest smaller steps, rings of collectors, giant sails drifting in carefully balanced orbits. None of it exists yet, but the physics does not forbid it. The barrier is only scale, only time, only will. As you float deeper into the vision, you think of what it would mean for life within such a construct. A civilization no longer confined to one planet would spread across habitats as numerous as the stars they orbit. Whole worlds of artificial light and warmth, bathed not in sunsets, but in the steady blaze of the star itself. Children might grow up never seeing a night sky. Artists might paint with reflections of 1,000,000 mirrored panels, and yet somewhere a whisper of longing would remain for open wilderness, for a patch of ground unmeasured, for a night unbroken by fire. The thought brings you pause. Would you feel at home here, surrounded by brilliance, but cut off from the sight of the stars beyond? Or would you feel imprisoned, held too close to the fire, too far from the open dark? You cannot answer. Perhaps no one can, until the choice is made. And so you let the vision linger, a star transformed into an engine, a sun turned into a lantern for its children. The image drifts gently behind your eyes, both alluring and disquieting, as you sense the next step waiting, not the star itself, but the glow it cannot hide, the waste heat that betrays even the most secret civilization.
You drift deeper into the vision of stars enclosed, and a thought begins to form in the quiet. Nothing that immense could ever remain invisible. A Dyson sphere, a Dyson swarm, any structure that harvests the fire of a star must also betray its presence. For no matter how carefully light is captured, no matter how elegant the engineering, there will always be waste, heat spilling outward into the darkness, a signature written across the spectrum of the sky. You imagine yourself floating in that darkness, far away, a telescope pressed gently against your mind's eye. The star you are watching seems ordinary at first, a point of light among billions. But then, when you look closer, you see that its glow does not match the story of its size or age. Something about it is wrong. It shines too faintly in visible light, but glows strangely in the infrared, as though it were cloaked in a skin that no natural process could explain. One quietly fascinating fact slips in. Astronomers already use infrared surveys, like those from the WISE space telescope, to search for such anomalies. The idea is simple. A Dyson structure would trap most of a star's light and re-emit it as heat. A star surrounded by collectors would no longer blaze like a jewel. Instead, it would radiate like a hidden furnace, glowing at wavelengths our eyes cannot see. And the eerie detail follows. If such structures exist, they may already have been glimpsed, mistaken for dust, for clouds, for the ordinary debris of stellar life. Somewhere in the catalogs of faint red glows may lie the trace of a civilization far older, far vaster than our own, unnoticed only because we expected nature and not design. You feel a shiver at the thought that the evidence could be sitting quietly in our data, waiting for recognition. You walk further into this vision, stepping across a field of starlight that flickers in impossible patterns. Around you, stars shimmer with strange halos, their heat signatures blooming like ghostly flowers. You let yourself imagine what it would mean to find one among them, to point to a star and say with calm certainty, "This light does not belong to nature. This is the breath of intelligence on a scale beyond comprehension." Researchers still debate how likely such detection would be. Some argue that any advanced civilization would use energy so efficiently that waste heat would be minimal, nearly invisible. Others counter that no process, no matter how advanced, can escape entropy. Heat must go somewhere. Even gods of engineering cannot cheat thermodynamics. The question lingers unresolved, a doorway still unopened. You pause with the reflection that follows. The universe is not silent, not truly. It hums with background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, with the quiet pulse of pulsars, with the whisper of quasars at the edge of visibility. If a civilization's light is hidden among those whispers, would we even know? Or would we keep calling it noise, dismissing it as static, until one day we learn to hear the difference? The night around you feels heavier now, crowded with unseen presences. You imagine countless stars, each one wrapped in structures, glowing faintly with wasted warmth, like lanterns buried under layers of cloth. From afar, they would seem muted, ordinary. But if you listen closely, the hum would betray them. The silence of the universe may not be silence at all, but a chorus still beyond your ears. You let the thought rest gently, not with urgency but with wonder. The Kardashev Scale invites you to imagine civilizations not hiding by choice, but by physics itself, visible only to those who know how to look. And so you keep looking, calm, dreamlike, aware that the next step may be stranger still, not the faint glow of hidden heat, but the flickering puzzle of a star that dimmed when it should not have, stirring suspicion and stories across the world.
You drift with the thought of stars that dim, and soon one memory takes shape, a strange case of Tabby's star. It sits 1,200 light-years away in the constellation of Cygnus, and for a time it captured imaginations across the planet. The star did not behave as it should. Instead of shining with steady brilliance, its light faltered, dipping unpredictably, sometimes by as much as 20%. That is an astonishing amount, far more than any planet could block as it passed in front of its sun. You let yourself linger in that moment of global wonder. Telescopes on Earth watched with confusion, the brightness rising and falling with no clear rhythm. Dust could explain some of it, comets perhaps, drifting in swarms, but not all. Each explanation felt like a partial answer, a patch on a mystery that refused to close. And in the silence of uncertainty, another possibility entered the conversation. Could this be the signature of alien engineering? The phrase that echoed across headlines was alien megastructure. You imagine the weight of those words as they fell into public space, igniting hope, fear, and curiosity. If a civilization had built a Dyson swarm, not a solid sphere, but a shifting sea of collectors orbiting the star, the effect might look exactly like this: starlight flickering, blocked in unpredictable ways, as if something vast and intentional moved across its face. Of course, scientists offered caution. Dust was the more likely culprit. Nature often produces the strangest illusions. Still, the allure of the unknown lingered. For once, the public gaze aligned with the Kardashev Scale, looking outward not at single planets, but at the idea of civilizations playing with the light of their suns. You feel the strangeness of that alignment, how quickly the world can leap from quiet astronomy to cosmic imagination. You step into a dreamlike scene where Tabby's star hovers before you like a pale lantern. Around it, countless panels float and shift, like shards of glass catching the glow. They drift in clusters, then scatter, then converge again, each motion blotting or revealing the star's light. It is beautiful,
hypnotic, but also unnerving. You cannot decide if you are witnessing the work of nature or intelligence. The uncertainty itself feels alive, pulsing with possibility. The question that follows is almost childlike. If we can notice the dimming of a distant star, what else might we see if we look more carefully? How many stars hide irregular patterns, waiting for algorithms and patience to reveal their secrets? And deeper still, what if civilizations want to be seen this way, not through messages or signals, but through the quiet artistry of reshaping light itself? You pause at the thought that if a Type 2 civilization exists, altering a star would not be a side project. It would be their daily reality, as ordinary as roads and power lines are for us. To them, bending starlight might be as unremarkable as flicking a switch. Yet from our vantage, fragile and distant, it becomes the grandest hint imaginable, a whisper from the edge of possibility. The case of Tabby's star has mostly settled now, with dust as the prevailing answer. Yet the dream it sparked remains. The Kardashev Scale gave us a framework to interpret such anomalies not only as puzzles, but as potential signs of something greater. Every unexplained dimming, every strange glow, becomes not just data, but a doorway. And even when the answer is natural, the door remains open, leading the mind into deeper night. You feel yourself drawn onward, curious and restless, for the Kardashev Scale does not stop at stars. Beyond Type 2 lies a category more unimaginable still. Civilizations that command not just a single sun, but the light of billions. You take a slow breath, ready to step from the scale of stars to the scale of galaxies.
You drift further into the silence, and the image of Tabby's star fades into the background, leaving behind a question that hums quietly in your thoughts. If a single flickering sun can stir so much curiosity, then why does the rest of the sky seem so ordinary? Billions upon billions of stars shine without interruption, steady and unremarkable. The heavens, for all their size, hold fewer signs of supercivilizations than one might expect. This is where the paradox grows heavy. You feel it like a weight pressing in from the vastness. The universe is ancient, more than 13 billion years old. Long enough, surely, for countless civilizations to rise, flourish, and spread. If even a fraction of them reached Type 2 or Type 3, they might have reshaped their neighborhoods, leaving marks in light and motion. Yet when we look, with instruments more sensitive than ever before, we mostly find silence. Astronomers call this puzzle the Great Silence, or sometimes the Fermi Paradox. The absence itself becomes a presence, like standing in a crowded room and hearing nothing but your own breath. You imagine drifting through a spiral arm of the Milky Way, expecting to see cosmic cities or engineered suns, but instead finding only quiet starlight. It is beautiful, but eerie, like wandering an abandoned city where every street is empty. Perhaps the civilizations are there, but choose not to speak. You imagine them cloaked, deliberately quiet, blending their activities into the natural rhythm of galaxies. A kind of cosmic shyness, or maybe a strategy, silence as survival. If so, the Kardashev Scale may be misleading. It suggests a ladder of visible achievements, but what if true wisdom is to leave no trace, to fold one's brilliance inward until it becomes invisible? Or perhaps the silence is more tragic. Civilizations might burn out before they climb very far, undone by their own hunger for energy.
You think of Earth's fragility, the tension between creation and destruction that defines our own climb. Multiply that tension across light years, across ages, and the silence begins to feel inevitable. The scale may not be a ladder at all, but a graveyard, each rung a reminder of how far most civilizations never make it. Still, the paradox remains unresolved. Astronomers point telescopes at distant galaxies, searching for unusual signatures, stars with missing light, galaxies glowing strangely in the infrared, hints of waste heat from colossal machines. And yet, each time, the data fades into ordinary explanations. Dust, gas, random fluctuations. Nature insisting on her dominance, while our imagination whispers of something more. The eerie detail that lingers in your mind is this. If a Type 3 civilization were to arise, one capable of harnessing energy across an entire galaxy, it would be difficult for us not to notice. Such beings might move stars, redirect their paths, or dim whole regions of space with technology so vast it would distort starlight itself. The night sky would not look the same. But when you lift your gaze, the constellations are familiar, unchanged. And so, the silence invites reflection. Maybe the scale itself is not about discovery, but about humility. Each empty observation reminds you that our climb is still beginning, that the ladder is taller than we can imagine. The absence of alien empires does not mean the universe is empty, only that its mysteries are quieter, subtler, more patient than we are. You close your eyes and let the darkness stretch around you. In this dreamlike space, silence is not emptiness, but a kind of canvas. It invites your mind to paint possibilities, hidden civilizations folded into black holes, beings that exist in forms beyond matter, or networks that hum beneath the background radiation itself. Researchers still wonder if we even know what to look for. Perhaps the signs are here already, woven into the static, but invisible to senses not yet refined. The thought leaves you suspended between awe and unease. The Kardashev Scale beckons onward, pointing toward civilizations of unimaginable reach. And though the silence feels heavy, it also feels like an invitation. Beyond the stars, beyond even the paradox, lies the dream of something larger. The architects of galaxies themselves.
You let the silence stretch, and then slowly you imagine it filling with something vast, almost impossible. The thought of civilizations beyond single stars begins to take shape, and with it, the next rung of the Kardashev Scale, Type 3. If Type 1 masters the energy of a planet, and Type 2 surrounds a star, then Type 3 dares to reach across a galaxy. It is a step so large that your mind almost refuses to hold it, like trying to picture the sea from the shore, while seeing only a single wave. A galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars, each with their own planets, moons, and hidden systems. To command that much energy is to play with light on the scale of creation itself. You drift into the dream of such a civilization, one that moves between suns as easily as you might walk between rooms, building networks that span spiral arms. You picture them as architects, not of houses, but of constellations. Entire star systems become their lanterns, arranged deliberately, glowing in patterns that we mistake for chance. One quietly fascinating fact rests here. The Milky Way itself is about 100,000 light-years across, and light from one side takes longer to reach the other than all of human history has lasted. For a civilization to scale itself to that size, it would need lifespans or patience that stretch beyond anything you know. Perhaps they do not measure time as we do.
Perhaps their sense of now covers eons, and the drift of galaxies is as natural to them as a change in seasons. An eerie detail creeps in. If such beings exist, they might see stars, not as suns, but as resources to be rearranged. Astronomers have speculated about stellar engines, machines that can tug a star across space using carefully balanced jets of energy. Imagine looking up and watching your sun move slowly but deliberately across the galaxy, not because of gravity's pull, but because someone far larger has chosen to nudge it. To us, it would be terrifying. To them, it might be routine. The reflection that lingers is whether such beings would even notice us. If a civilization reaches the scale of galaxies, a single planet with its fragile biosphere and brief history might appear like dust on the wind. Researchers still wonder if this is why the universe feels so quiet. Not because higher civilizations are absent, but because we are beneath their attention. Too small to see, too brief to matter. And yet, the imagination cannot resist. You picture yourself drifting along the Milky Way, watching as lines of light flicker into being, as though invisible hands have traced highways between stars. Each glowing thread represents energy harvested, transmitted, woven into a galactic web. Perhaps information travels faster than light through structures we cannot yet conceive, or perhaps patience alone binds it all together. You wonder what it feels like to live inside such a structure, not on a planet, but in the breathing skin of a galaxy. The Kardashev scale becomes not just a measure of energy, but a ladder into dreamlike possibility. It invites you to ask, is there a ceiling? Can intelligence stretch beyond galaxies, weaving clusters together into a single mind? Or does everything collapse eventually, crushed by entropy, forgotten by time? No one knows. That uncertainty is part of the wonder. The sense that the future stretches further than any horizon you have ever seen. You pause, letting the image of galactic architects linger. Their existence is only a thought experiment, a ghostly idea pinned to a scale invented by a human mind in the 20th century. And yet the idea endures, because it opens space for imagination. It whispers that the story of life may be larger than any planet, any star, even any galaxy. The ladder points upward, and though the rungs are impossibly far apart, they remain visible in your dreams. The silence returns, softer now, but with an edge. If beings of such magnitude exist, why have we never glimpsed their work? You hold the question lightly, knowing it waits for you in the next shadow. The eerie absence, the haunting possibility that perhaps no one ever climbs so high.
You let the vision of galactic architects fade, and what remains is the haunting emptiness of the sky. For if civilizations could rise to the scale of galaxies, reshaping stars and weaving networks across spiral arms, then why do the galaxies we observe look so untouched? Each one shines as though ruled only by gravity and physics, not by intelligence. They are immense, yes, but ordinary. The absence feels louder than any signal. This is the eerie absence, the silence that lingers after you've imagined the impossible. You drift in it now, suspended among countless galaxies scattered like spilled salt across the darkness. Their light reaches you from millions or billions of years in the past, and yet each looks the same, unbroken, unshaped, unclaimed. No patterns in their glow, no missing pieces, no scars of rearranged stars. Only the vast machinery of nature working in solitude. One fascinating fact slips into your thoughts. The Sloan Digital Sky Survey has mapped millions of galaxies, cataloging shapes and colors with meticulous care. If even a small fraction of them were host to Type 3 civilizations, their waste heat, their patterns, their alterations would almost certainly appear in the beta.
and yet the catalogs remain stubbornly mundane, filled with spirals, ellipticals, and irregulars that owe their forms to cosmic processes alone. The eerie detail is not just what we fail to see, but what that failure implies. If higher civilizations are absent, then maybe we are alone, not just now, but forever. The universe might stretch for billions of light years, but its stars may shine only for themselves. That possibility is heavy, like walking through a cathedral built for no congregation, a silence so vast it becomes almost unbearable. Yet researchers still wonder. Perhaps the signs are there, simply hidden from our view. Maybe civilizations learn to mask their energy, to recycle it so completely that almost no waste escapes into space. If intelligence can cloak itself, then it would vanish from our instruments, as though wrapped in an invisibility woven from physics itself. The galaxies might be full, humming with minds beyond measure, and we would never know. Another reflection drifts in. Perhaps civilizations do not cloak themselves, but collapse before they reach such heights. The larger they grow, the more fragile they become, until they crumble under the weight of their own hunger. Imagine a Type 2 society, spanning a star system, undone by a single mistake in balance, and then multiply that across galaxies. It is sobering to think that energy mastery might not ensure survival, but only accelerate decline. And still, you wonder if the absence is not absence at all, but transcendence. Maybe the Kardashev scale measures only the visible, only energy in familiar forms. If life evolves beyond matter, into patterns of information that slip through dimensions, then galaxies could be full of presence that we simply cannot perceive. To us, they would look unchanged. To them, they would be overflowing. You linger with this paradox, holding both possibilities at once. The galaxies might be empty, or they might be overflowing. Both are equally invisible to us. And as you float in this uncertainty, the silence transforms. It is no longer threatening, but contemplative, like standing at the edge of a great ocean at night. You cannot see the creatures beneath the waves, but you feel their possibility, moving unseen in the dark water. The Kardashev scale remains a ladder, but the rungs beyond Type 3 fade into mist. You sense that to climb further will require more than energy. It will require an entirely new way of imagining existence. Still, the thought lingers. If galaxies are empty, then the past itself may hold the answers, hidden in the long sweep of cosmic time. You let your thoughts drift toward time itself, toward the oceans of ages that have passed before us, where civilizations may have risen and fallen unseen. The silence does not erase their possibility, it only makes the mystery deeper.
You drift now into the current of time itself, letting the weight of centuries press gently against you. If the galaxies appear quiet, perhaps it is not because they are empty, but because time has already swept its civilizations away. The universe is old, more than 13 billion years old, and in that span, entire empires of light could have risen and vanished before the Earth was even born. You linger with the scale of it. Our planet formed just 4.5 billion years ago, a late arrival compared to the universe's grand timeline. Life took nearly 1 billion years more to stir in the oceans, and intelligence, the kind that looks outward at stars, emerged only in the last few heartbeats of cosmic history. You realize that if civilizations elsewhere began earlier, they could be millions, even billions of years ahead, or already gone, their traces reduced to whispers in radiation and dust. One quietly fascinating fact flows in. The oldest known star in our galaxy, HD 140283,
often called the Methuselah star, is about 14 billion years old, nearly as old as the universe itself. Imagine planets circling such an ancient sun, bathed in light long before Earth existed. What stories might have unfolded there in that forgotten epoch? What forms of life might have flourished and faded while our skies were still dark? The eerie detail that follows is this: time erases evidence with ruthless patience. Planets crumble. Stars expand and consume their children. Galaxies collide, shredding orderly structures into chaos. Even the artifacts of mighty civilizations could vanish, buried beneath cosmic events, leaving no trace for future eyes. The silence you feel now may not be the silence of absence, but of ruins swept clean by ages too vast to grasp. Researchers still wonder whether our search is limited not by distance, but by timing. Perhaps the window to notice another civilization is narrow, a brief overlap between their signal and our ability to listen. Imagine civilizations as fireflies in a dark forest, each glowing only for a moment. Unless two overlap, the forest remains dark. You begin to see the universe not as empty, but as a vast meadow where lights flicker on and off, rarely in sync. You let your mind wander further. What if civilizations find ways to endure, not in their material forms, but as traces encoded into the very structure of space-time? Could their presence ripple faintly in background radiation or in subtle patterns within cosmic constants? It is a thought both dizzying and serene. The idea that time does not erase entirely, but transforms, hiding messages in places we have not yet learned to read. The reflection that rises is quiet but profound. Perhaps humanity is not late but early. Perhaps we stand at the dawn of cosmic civilizations, and the silence is simply the hush before the chorus. Or perhaps we are indeed latecomers, wandering through a universe where most voices have already faded. In either case, the scale of time reshapes your sense of self, reminding you that the human story is only one thread in a tapestry too vast to see. You close your eyes, and in that darkness, you feel time flowing around you like an endless ocean. Civilizations rise like waves, cresting for a moment before falling back. Some may leave foam upon the shore, faint signs of their passing. Most leave nothing at all. And here you are, a single ripple in that boundless sea, listening for echoes across ages. The silence of galaxies now feels different, less like an absence and more like a reminder. You are a small part of something much larger, caught in a current that stretches beyond imagination. And as you drift deeper into this realization, you begin to wonder what fragile lights might still be burning out there. Ghost lights, faint but enduring, carrying traces of minds that once looked up at their own skies. You close your eyes. You drift onward, carried now by the thought of signals, of faint traces that might persist even after their makers are gone. If civilizations rise and fall like waves, perhaps some of their light lingers, flickering in ways that reach across time. Astronomers call these traces technosignatures, not the voices themselves, but the footprints they leave behind. You picture yourself walking slowly through a gallery of faint whispers. One exhibit glows softly with radio waves, the kind we once sprayed into the sky without caution. Old broadcasts of music, news, and chatter, expanding outward in a fragile bubble around Earth. If another civilization listens carefully, perhaps they hear our voices now, decades delayed but still shimmering across space. You imagine the reverse, too, us picking up a ghostly transmission, words from beings long gone, still drifting like bottled messages on a cosmic tide. One quietly fascinating fact settles into your thoughts. The first intentional human message beamed toward the stars, the Arecibo message of 1974, is still traveling outward. It is aimed at a cluster of stars 25,000 light-years away. By the time it arrives, our civilization may be unrecognizable or perhaps vanished altogether. Yet the message continues, indifferent to our fate, a thread of continuity carried by physics alone. The eerie detail that follows is how fragile such signals truly are. Over distance, radio waves weaken, scattered and absorbed by cosmic dust. After a few hundred light-years, they dissolve into noise, indistinguishable from the background hum of the universe. It is sobering to think that most civilizations might whisper, but those whispers fade too quickly for anyone else to hear. Silence may not mean absence, only distance. Researchers still wonder what other techno-signatures might endure longer. Waste heat, perhaps, the unavoidable glow of machines at work, infrared signatures stretching across starlight, or chemical traces in atmospheres, patterns of gases that should not exist naturally, hinting at industry or life support. Even more subtle signs come to mind, light patterns too regular to be natural, or the absence of light itself, as though something vast and deliberate has blocked a star. You let your imagination wander into stranger territory. What if civilizations leave signatures not in signals or gases, but in art, patterns etched across planetary surfaces, visible from orbit but meaningless without context? Or what if they write into the mathematics of pulsars, embedding rhythms that look natural but carry intention? The universe may already be full of messages, but we lack the key to notice. The reflection that rises is simple but unsettling. Techno-signatures may outlast their makers, but not forever. They too are washed away by time. To catch one is to align with a fleeting overlap, to be in the right place at the right age. Perhaps that is why our search feels so empty. We may be late to the signals, or too early to the next wave. You drift deeper into the image of ghost lights. A dim glow flickers at the edge of your vision, as if a city once burned on a distant world, its lights still echoing faintly in the night. The city itself is gone, the beings long vanished, but the glow remains, a soft afterimage. You realize that this is the heart of the search, not certainty but possibility. Each unexplained pattern, each flicker of energy, is an invitation to wonder. The Kardashev Scale casts these ghost lights in perspective. If Type 1 civilizations leave traces on their planets and Type 2 on their stars, then Type 3 might alter the very glow of galaxies. Somewhere in the haze of infrared surveys, there may already be faint marks of their presence, buried in data no one has yet learned how to read. You hold this thought like a lantern in the dark. The search itself is the answer. Each attempt to listen, each scan of the sky, is a reminder that humanity, too, is leaving its first whispers, fragile but real, on the ocean of time. And as you drift further, your attention turns homeward again, to the delicate climb of our own civilization. How fragile it is, how luminous, perched between invention and destruction.
You drift back toward Earth now, letting the scale of galaxies shrink into the more intimate glow of your own world. After imagining civilizations that command entire star systems or even galaxies, your thoughts return to the fragile, flickering climb of humanity itself. You feel the contrast, how small our steps appear, and yet how monumental they feel to us, perched on the first rungs of the Kardashev ladder. Humanity, by Kardashev's measure, has not yet reached Type 1. We harness only a fraction of our planet's energy, still tangled in fossil fuels, still learning to listen to the wind and sun with the care they deserve. By some calculations, we hover around 0.7 on the scale, a partial civilization, not yet planetary, still finding its footing. The reflection is both humbling and strangely comforting. We are beginners, and beginners are allowed to stumble. One quietly fascinating fact threads its way into your thoughts. If humanity were to reach Type 1, it would require us to capture and manage about 10 to the 16 watts of power, thousands of times more than we use today. That scale of energy would mean not just abundance, but transformation. It would reshape how we build, travel, eat, and think. And yet, you sense how precarious it feels. The more we strive upward, the more risks we carry in our climb. An eerie detail lingers at the edge of this reflection. Civilizations may destroy themselves before they ever reach that first threshold. The tools that give us power also give us weapons of annihilation. Nuclear fire, runaway climate, artificial systems that slip beyond our control, each of these becomes a shadow hovering over our fragile ascent. You picture a ladder hanging over a void, each rung higher but thinner, and the fall always waiting. Researchers still wonder whether this threshold, the leap to Type 1, is the hardest step of all. Once a civilization masters its planet, perhaps stability follows. But the in-between stage, where humanity now lingers, may be the most dangerous, advanced enough to threaten itself, not yet wise enough to ensure survival. It is a paradox built into our climb, one that echoes through every fragile generation. You let your mind rest in the thought of what it might feel like if humanity does succeed. A planet unified not by conquest, but by shared stewardship, drawing energy cleanly from winds and tides and light. Imagine city lights glowing softly, not as waste, but as harmony, powered by the rhythms of the earth itself. That image feels almost like a dream, fragile, luminous, just out of reach, but worth reaching for. And yet you wonder, even if we succeed, even if humanity becomes Type 1, how far will we go? Will we step onto the second rung, building vast structures around our star? Or will we linger here, content to live in balance with a single world? Perhaps the scale is not a destiny, but a mirror, showing us what we could be, without demanding that we must be it. You close your eyes and let this reflection drift through you. The climb is not certain. The ladder itself may be steeper than we imagine, but the act of reaching, of imagining higher rungs, is already transformative. To see ourselves as part of a cosmic story is to stretch our horizon beyond survival into something larger, something more enduring. The silence of the universe presses gently at the edges of your thoughts. Maybe civilizations rarely survive the climb. Maybe we are among the few to even try. That possibility is daunting, but also precious. It makes every step upward feel like a rare gift, every survival like a quiet victory against the odds. And so you linger here, with earth beneath your feet and stars above your head, balanced between fragility and hope. Ahead lies the possibility of dreaming beyond the scale itself, of wondering whether energy is the true measure, or if something else, something less visible, more elusive, defines what it means to endure.
The Kardashev Scale, elegant in its simplicity, begins to feel less like a ladder and more like a lens. Through it, you've glimpsed possible futures, suns encircled by vast constructs, galaxies humming with engineered light, civilizations rising and vanishing in silence. But the longer you dwell here, the more you sense the shadows between those bright visions. Perhaps, you think, the measure of a civilization is not only in how much energy it can command, but in how it chooses to use it. An unsettling truth hovers at the edge of your thoughts. Power without wisdom can be indistinguishable from self-destruction. A Type 1 civilization might conquer its planet's energy, but if it consumes without care, the triumph could unravel into collapse. A Type 2 might cloak itself in the radiance of a Dyson sphere, yet if it cannot master restraint, the structure becomes a tomb, trapping heat, suffocating the life that built it. Energy, after all, is not just a resource, it is a mirror of intention. This thought brings you to a strange, almost eerie idea whispered by some researchers. What if the Kardashev scale is misleading? What if the civilizations that last, the ones that endure the silence of the universe, are not those that expand outward into blazing energy, but those that turn inward, learning to live lightly, invisibly, in harmony? Perhaps the cosmos feels empty not because there are no others, but because the most advanced have slipped into quiet sustainability, radiating no excess, leaving no trace. You picture such beings, not titans harvesting stars, but caretakers dissolving into their worlds, their signatures so subtle that our telescopes mistake them for background noise. A civilization that has reached not just technological maturity, but ethical and spiritual maturity. In that vision, the silence of the night sky feels different. It is not emptiness, but discretion. Not absence, but presence in hiding. There is another possibility too, one that feels darker. The universe may be filled with ambitious civilizations that rose, blazed brightly, and then extinguished themselves. Each became a warning, written in vanished radio signals, in broken ruins orbiting dead stars. The Kardashev scale, in this light, becomes less a celebration of progress and more a series of traps, lures that tempt civilizations to climb until they reach a rung too fragile to hold their weight. You let these contrasting visions circle each other in your mind. Civilizations that burn themselves out versus civilizations that choose silence. Both could explain the absence of cosmic neighbors. Both could shape the destiny of humanity. And both suggest that energy, while measurable, may not be the deepest metric of survival. As you breathe into this thought, you realize that eeriness lies not just in the possibility of others, but in the reflection of ourselves. The Kardashev scale was designed as a way of searching for alien civilizations. Yet the longer you hold it, the more it feels like a mirror of humanity's choices. It asks us not only how far we can go, but how carefully we can endure. You imagine future humans, far beyond your time, looking back on this moment in history, a species still fragile, still small, still reaching. Will they see it as the era when we began to climb, or as the era when we stepped too quickly and fell? That uncertainty is what makes the silence of the stars so haunting. It is not just their silence, but the echo of our own possible futures. The thought lingers like a question without answer. Maybe the truest measure of civilization is not power,
but balance. Not how brightly we burn, but how long we last. And in that balance, perhaps lies the hidden wisdom that the Kardashev scale only hints at, like a shadow behind the light.
The quiet of the Kardashev scale has carried you a long way through the bright arcs of possibility and the shadowed silences between them. You rest now at the threshold of imagination's farthest edge, where numbers and classifications begin to dissolve, and what remains is something softer. The question of how civilizations, yours included, choose to live with power. You drift through the thought of a Type 3 civilization, one that spans an entire galaxy. The image glows in your mind like a constellation of intention, billions of stars bent into harmony, countless worlds linked in a network older than anything you can comprehend. Yet, as dazzling as this picture is, you feel its distance. It belongs not to your grasp, but to your dreams. And perhaps that is its role. The Kardashev scale is not a map to be followed, but a story told in numbers, a reminder that the path of life stretches far beyond one planet, one sun, even one spiral of stars. Its power is not only in predicting aliens, but in inviting reflection. If you listen carefully, it whispers, "You are part of something vast. Your civilization is small, but its story is unfinished." One quietly fascinating truth stirs within you. Humanity already harnesses more energy than any other known species on Earth's history. An achievement both fragile and dangerous. With every light switched on, every engine turned, you climb a fraction higher on the first rung of Kardashev's ladder. And yet, the climb feels weightless, almost dreamlike when you picture the ladder itself stretching into the endless dark. A more unsettling detail brushes against you. In the billions of years of cosmic history, countless opportunities for others to rise have already come and gone. If none remain, then humanity may be the only flicker left, a fragile flame trembling in a cold universe. Or perhaps, and this is the mystery that stays with you, the quiet is simply a veil, and behind it, civilizations wait unseen, their lights dimmed by choice or necessity. The unsolved question lingers gently in your thoughts. Is survival measured by expansion or by restraint? Researchers still wonder whether the civilizations that last are those that radiate power into the cosmos or those that fall silent, living in ways that leave no trace. The Kardashev scale frames the first path, but the second may be hidden, invisible even to itself. As these reflections spiral inward, your mind eases. The vastness of the scale feels less like a ladder to climb and more like a lullaby, slow and spacious. You sense that what matters most is not the next rung, but the rhythm of breathing, the balance of light and shadow, the quiet reminder that you are here, thinking, wondering, drifting. The silence of the universe no longer feels heavy. It feels open, endless, welcoming. A canvas not of absence, but of possibility. Perhaps alien civilizations exist. Perhaps they don't. Perhaps the most advanced are those who choose to vanish into peace, becoming part of the dark itself. Or perhaps the scale has barely begun to tell the story, and the truest measures of civilization lie in realms you cannot yet imagine. For now, though,
The night is enough. The stars above you hold their places. The hum of your world carries you, and the ladder of Kardashev waits quietly, stretching upward in infinite patience. And so you let go of the questions. You let the images of stars and galaxies blur into the soft rhythm of your breathing. You let your thoughts scatter like distant lights, unhurried, fading into rest. The scale does not end here, but for you, tonight, the journey pauses. Wind down. You feel your body soften into stillness as though gravity itself has grown gentler. The story you've wandered through remains, but it no longer presses with its questions. Instead, it hovers faintly, like a constellation glimpsed through thin clouds. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to hold it. Each breath you take now is part of a rhythm older than any civilization, older even than the stars themselves. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. Feel how time itself seems to stretch, each moment longer, quieter. The Kardashev Scale, with its immense ladder of energy, retreats into the distance. What is left here is only you, the night, and a calm that unfolds like a galaxy turning. Let the images you've carried, Dyson spheres, galactic networks, vanished civilizations, drift further from focus. They can wait. They belong to the vast story of the universe, not to this moment. Your story right now is rest. If your mind still wanders, let it. If it circles back to the silence of the cosmos, that's all right. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to know. The night is large enough to hold all mysteries without urgency. That's all for tonight. Let your mind keep floating or drift into sleep. I'll be here again next time.